December. It's a month that's typically thought of for winter storms and colder temperatures across most of the lower 48. It's also the time of year that families begin their annual Christmas shopping for their loved ones. A study was done by YouGov.com in 2018 that showed over a third of Americans typically do their Christmas shopping in late November and early December, and 2023 was no different. Families across the Deep South began shopping on December 9, 2023 with jolly Christmas spirit in the air, thinking that their lives couldn't be better. But all that changed very fast. On the afternoon and evening time hours of December 9th, a catastrophic tornado outbreak occurred across portions of Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, and other areas of the Deep South, producing strong tornadoes, hail up to the size of baseballs, and winds strong enough to flip over semis. But when the event was forecasted first by the SPC and the NWS, nothing was thought of it more than, oh, it's another Dixie Alley windbag. So how did this happen? Well, in this video, we try to answer that question, go over the destruction the tornadoes left on these communities, and more. This is the story of the December 9th, 2023 Tennessee Valley tornado outbreak. Enjoy. Now we're gonna go ahead and start off this documentary by talking about the forecasting job done by the Storm Prediction Center and others for this severe weather event. As early as 12Z on December 4th, it was clear that a big-time severe weather threat was going to be in play for sections of Dixie Alley, so the Storm Prediction Center issued a 15% severe weather probability extending from portions of central Arkansas down to the Gulf Coast, and from east to west, it extended from portions of northern Mississippi back into far southeast Oklahoma. By December 7th, the slight risk had shifted slightly off to the northeast, now including sections of southwestern Tennessee, and by the day of the event, it finally included portions of south central Kentucky and middle Tennessee, and this is obviously the area where the outbreak actually ended up happening. And a 10% hatch tornado risk was put in place for this area eventually, but it wasn't until we had already had the strongest tornado of the day, the Clarksville EF3. So why was the forecasting job for this event so poor? Is it the SPC's fault? No. This is what the environment looked like by 20Z on the RAP model near Clarksville, Tennessee. So this area we were dealing with under 800 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE, combined with SRH values under 300 and shear being at 40 knots even within the first 3 kilometers of the atmosphere. Dew points were not super impressive, remaining at around 60, although there was a signal for large to very large hail as they had a significant drop-off in the higher levels of the atmosphere, and lapse rates were about 6 to 7 depending on which layer of the atmosphere you looked at. So how did an environment that usually would end up producing weak tornadoes and large hail produce one of the most intense tornadoes in Tennessee history for the month of December? Well, we'll dive into that later as we break down the Clarksville, Tennessee tornado. But first, we need to break down the tornadoes and the other events that led up to it. As early as 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time, impressively tornadic supercells were beginning to take shape across portions of western Tennessee, northeastern Arkansas, and western Kentucky. This was a bad sign because at this point we were not expecting any discrete supercellular activity until at least noon, so this meant that we were getting an early start to the event. By 11:15 a.m., impressive rotation was starting to wrap up with a supercell near Dyersburg, Tennessee. This is the beginning of what would eventually become the Clarksville producing supercell. However, before it produced the infamous Clarksville tornado, it produced a much smaller but still pretty significant tornado that impacted the town of Rutherford, Tennessee. The tornado touched down at 11:32 a.m. It was a large wedge tornado confirmed by weather spotters that caused significant damage northwest of Rutherford. This tornado tracked for a long time and made its way through the communities of Sharon, Greenfield, and Dresden, Tennessee, along with Rutherford. Seeing the devastation that this tornado was causing on the ground, the National Weather Service decided to make the appropriate move of issuing a PDS, also known as a Particularly Dangerous Situation Tornado Warning, for Rutherford, Tennessee.
We are going live much sooner than expected because there is currently a PDS tornado warning in parts of northwest Tennessee. Notice the correlation coefficient has been picking up on a clearly defined tornado here on radar just north of Greenfield, and this will be moving toward Gleason and Dresden, Tennessee over the next several minutes. So again, if you are in this tornado warning, you need to make sure you're seeking shelter immediately, away from windows and on the lowest floor possible.
The community of Rutherford was devastated. Debris was measured on the correlation coefficient product on the Paducah, Kentucky radar up to 12,000 feet in the atmosphere. This 1,800-foot wide tornado ended up causing 3 major injuries, but luckily 0 fatalities. However, this was only the beginning of what this supercell would manage to do. And just over an hour later, the same supercell produced another EF1 tornado, this time near the community of Dover, Tennessee. This tornado had a pretty impressive velocity signature on the radar and also had a clear correlation coefficient drop presence. As you can tell, it was nowhere nearly as impressive as the tornado that impacted the Rutherford area. However, it was still a significant cone tornado on the ground for just over 8 minutes east of Dover. Now, remember how earlier in this video I said there was something that led up to the Clarksville tornado that allowed it to become so strong? Well, in this next clip, my good friend Levi SWX decides to kind of explain what I mean by that, and also talks about what the environment was like, because he actually launched a weather balloon just before the Clarksville tornado, so he saw something that we didn't, and he's going to explain what it was. So, Levi, what did you see in this environment that maybe we didn't see at first glance just based off of soundings from the models and stuff like that?
We didn't get it high enough to measure Cape because the lower level jet was ripping, which is also a good factor for tornadoes. So that immediately caught my attention. And then once we got that photograph back, it was just very, very curved. The geometry was insane on it. And I knew it was going to be far more potent than we thought beforehand. I had a soccer game to go to after that, and I could not stop thinking about how big of a day it was going to be. And I got out that soccer game, and I remember just seeing Clarksville on the ground.
The environment was becoming extremely unstable, and wind shear values were picking up by the minute. This is what led to the production of the violent Clarksville, Tennessee tornado. Thank you to Levi WX for helping me out with this segment of the video. If you haven't already, make sure to go subscribe to him. His channel will be linked down in the description. Now let's get right into the deadly Clarksville EF3. At 1:40 p.m. Central Daylight Time, a large and destructive tornado touched down northwest of Clarksville, Tennessee, damaging homes and businesses severely. This tornado would go on to move through the north side of Clarksville, killing 3, injuring dozens, and causing millions in property damage, but the tornado didn't stop there. It continued to track further east towards the community of Allensville, Kentucky. The south side of Allensville took a direct hit from this tornado at its strongest point. By 2:23 p.m., a particularly dangerous situation tornado warning was issued for Bowling Green, Kentucky, as it looked like this tornado was going to track right through the center of the city. It continued with a deadly velocity signature all the way up towards Auburn, where it eventually dissipated. Now, a lot of people ask me why I didn't cover the Clarksville, Tennessee tornado live like I do most tornadoes of that intensity, and the reason is I was at a car dealership for the entire day until the evening, getting a new car for my mother. Okay, I wasn't getting the car, but we were getting a car as a family. It was a huge deal, and obviously, if you guys have ever been to a car dealership, you know that that is a long day's work. There's a lot of paperwork to be filled out, and I didn't have a whole lot that I could do other than just sit there and watch the Clarksville tornado on the ground. I was updating frequently on my community tab, but it was a very upsetting moment because I knew that there was a tornado on the ground ruining, changing people's lives, and there was nothing I could do about it. I couldn't cover it. I couldn't hardly get my word out about it, and a lot of people didn't know what was happening because they weren't expecting something big to happen that day, because at the time there was only a slight risk of severe weather. So that is why I couldn't unfortunately cover the Clarksville tornado, but we did cover a tornado later in the day that a lot of you guys probably know about, and that was the Hendersonville tornado, and we're going to talk about that later. For this next portion of the video, we're going to go a little bit more in-depth on the Clarksville tornado and its overall statistics, like its path length, its maximum width, where it caused the EF3 level damage, and more. The exact touchdown location of the tornado was northwest of Clarksville, Tennessee, just northeast of the Woodlawn community. Now, it quickly strengthened to an EF2 intensity tornado as it approached Bel Air Estates. You can see that we've got a lot of EF2 damage indicators from Lafayette Road. Now, the tornado continued to push northeastward, strengthening further, where it eventually caused its first swath of EF3 damage right over Ringgold Road, causing some significant damage to homes. It continued to track northeast northeastward after that, causing another swath of EF3 damage from West Coyote Creek back over towards Peach Street, and then it continued to push northeastward, gradually weakening. However, widespread EF2 damage did still occur with this tornado. Even after it crossed the Tennessee-Kentucky state line, it caused some EF2 damage to the Allensville community, specifically on the south side of town, and then eventually it dissipated as it made its way northeast of Ash Spring, Kentucky, and crossing Nashville Road. Now, the same supercell that produced the Clarksville tornado produced another very brief tornado on the south side of Bowling Green, Kentucky, just 45 minutes later, just north of Basel Griffin Park. There was reported of tree damage, roof damage, as well as some damage to exterior walls on certain homes. However, this was a very short tracking tornado. Luckily, there were no fatalities and no injuries with it. On your screen now, you're seeing damage from this tornado that left over 20,000 people without power, completely destroyed 114 homes, and left over 900 more significantly damaged. This also caused thousands of dollars of damage to the Clarksville School of Fine Arts on the northwest side of the city. Overall, 4 fatalities were recorded and 61 injuries were reported as well. And just 45 minutes later, our next significant tornado occurred near the community of Sladen, Tennessee. A clear signature of rotation was wrapping up on the velocity product at around 3:24 p.m. Central, and that is whenever a confirmed large and extremely dangerous tornado impacted the community of Sladen, Tennessee. Luckily, this is a very rural area, but unfortunately there was one home that brought 2 injuries. And just 30 minutes later, the start of one of the most intense supercells of the day developed near White Bluff, Tennessee, producing a large and extremely dangerous tornado near the community of Griffintown. This tornado had a radar presence that was making it so evident that it was on the ground and that it was intense that even me as a 13-year-old child at the time could tell that this was something huge. This was live coverage from whenever this tornado was on the ground that I did on December 9th.
Yeah, that's a tornado on the ground. Okay, tornado back on the ground here west of Nashville, heading straight for Griffintown here. This is a large tornado. Yeah, that debris ball is pretty big. Let's go ahead and measure it. Looks like the debris ball is about 1,500 yards wide.
YouTuber and storm chaser Cameron Fry lived in White Bluff, Tennessee, and was taking shelter on December 9th, but came out of his safe spot the next day to discover that his town had been destroyed by this EF2 beast. He has allowed me to use his footage of the damage from this tornado for this portion of the video, so make sure to go subscribe to him. His channel will be linked in the description, and his name is on the screen now.
So this is the part that really got just, it's so hard. Especially right here. This is the part that really grips me. Right there. Poor people.
The long-tracking 500-yard wide wedge tornado caused 2 injuries, but miraculously nobody was killed in the incident. However, this supercell was only beginning the true devastation that it would cause to the Nashville metro. But before we get into that, it is important to note that we did have another significant tornado impact the town of Springfield, Tennessee. We were also live for this one, and I could tell based off of that velocity couplet and how large that debris signature was, that this was going to be one that would not be good for the people that were on the ground experiencing it, and that was certainly the case. This was a decently long-tracking, large cone tornado that ended up impacting the south side of Springfield and moving through the Oakland neighborhood area as well. This tornado as well caused 0 fatalities, but it did cause 4 injuries. It blew down trees, power lines, and caused some significant damage to structures near Perry Park and areas along Memorial Boulevard. Now it's time to discuss the largest and, in my opinion, the most interesting tornado of the event, the Hendersonville EF2. This was a wedge tornado that touched down at 4:32 p.m. Central Time, causing extreme damage on the northeast side of the Nashville metro, killing 3 and causing 22 injuries. But in these next clips, you get to learn the true devastation and the impacts that these communities felt and why. The Hendersonville tornado touched down at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. The tornado took a long track across the north side of the Nashville metro, eventually making its way over towards the community of Hendersonville. The National Weather Service saw videos and reports of this tornado and decided to issue a tornado emergency, the highest level of weather warning that exists.
Okay.
New information. This tornado
so it's
warning
just
has been
to a
upgraded.
tornado emergency. The National Weather Service has issued a tornado emergency for Davidson, Sumner, and Wilson counties in Tennessee.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
This is a, once again, this is a dangerous situation, a life-changing situation for most of the people in the path of this.
We now have a tornado emergency. This is a tornado emergency right now in the Henderson area. This is the first tornado emergency that we've had in quite a while. Large destructive tornado in Hendersonville. Again, this is a deadly tornado right now moving through Hendersonville. Going toward Bluegrass Meadows, Gallatin, Cedar Grove. Just horrible stuff. Awful.
Tornado emergency for Cottontown, Gallatin, Hendersonville, LaGuardo, Martha, Shackle Island, and Cairo. Tornado emergency. Those are only issued in the most deadly tornadoes.
The tornado caused catastrophic damage, hitting a transformer on the west side of Hendersonville, causing a large explosion and fireball as well. In total, the Hendersonville tornado damaged 275 structures across the north side of the Nashville metro. It ended up heavily damaging 74 structures and destroying in their entirety of 12. After the Hendersonville tornado, 10 more tornadoes touched down in Dixie Alley that night, most of them being relatively insignificant, except for one. By midnight, a concerning train of supercells was sweeping through most of the state of Alabama, with a very significant supercell moving through the Birmingham metro. As this supercell continued to push northeast, it produced a large, wedge, high-end EF1 tornado in the Birmingham metro region that ended up heavily damaging homes and downing trees. Now, an important bit of context here is that the National Weather Service actually surveyed this as two separate tornadoes that moved through the south side of Birmingham. But if you notice, the radar cut out at about 12:06 a.m. through 12:13 a.m., giving us a lack of velocity data, and there was, quote, not enough damage along Windsor Boulevard to prove that this was one tornado. However, you'll notice that there were reports of thunderstorm gust wind damage in the exact same track whenever the tornado supposedly occluded and then touched back down. So in my opinion, this was likely just one long tracking tornado across the south side of Birmingham. So to recap, the December 9th, 2023 tornado outbreak was an instance where even the most experienced of meteorologists weren't able to forecast what happened on this devastating night. In total, nearly 100 people were left injured, 7 fatalities occurred, and over $65 million in damages were done after adjusting for inflation. This is a night that will go down in Tennessee state history as one of the most significant tornado outbreaks of all time in December, and yet outside of the people impacted by the event and the weather community, the event is remembered by virtually nobody. And that is the story of the December 9th, 2023 tornado outbreak. Now, before we end off this video, I have to give a special thanks to certain people or else this wouldn't be possible. Huge shout out to Levi WX for helping me with a certain portion of this video. Go subscribe to his channel if you've not already. Let's see if we can get him to 500 subscribers. Also, a huge thank you to Stormrunner Media and Cameron Fry for allowing me to use their footage in this video. And huge shout out to all of our channel members. You guys are what keeps this channel running and lets me know that this is going to be a potential career option for me in the future. If you'd like to become a member, you get access to exclusive content, custom stickers to use in chat, and much, much more. So make sure to do that by clicking the link down in the description. But that's all I've got for you guys today. So if you did enjoy, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace.